Saturday View on Midlands 103. With thanks to Lumclean Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumcleanEnergy.com. Have your say. Call 0818 300 103. Text or WhatsApp your Saturday View to 083 3010 103.
Hello and a very good morning, Ronan Berry here, and it's time for you to have your Saturday View right across the Midlands. A little bit later in this show, I'll be looking at the recent Irish Times Ipsos poll that looked at our attitudes, based on a survey that was carried out amongst a number of people, our attitudes towards immigration, and what it suggests is that about a third of the population are looking for a tightening of immigration policy and immigration strategy by the government. Now, I know there has been some changes in that in the past couple of days too. We'll look at that with a local government minister a bit later in the show. But this morning we're going to dedicate the show, the first part of the show, to looking at that topic and subject of loneliness. And as Tony Crowell mentioned me there before the news at 10 o'clock, we often think of loneliness, particularly around times like Christmas, but maybe throughout the year we maybe sometimes take our focus off exactly the scale of it, because Ireland last year was put out there as being one of the loneliest countries in Europe, if not the loneliness. And it's estimated about 400,000 people in the country suffer from loneliness. And the Irish longitudinal study on ageing previously reported that more than 37% of people aged 50 and over felt lonely, often or some of the time, and that this figure rose to 45% after the age of 74. Loneliness can be described and is often described as an epidemic, and that maybe sometimes we don't get a chance to really to get to the scale and determine the scale and get to the depths of exactly how much of an issue it is. So this morning we're going to dive into this pressing and poignant issue that affecting many across our beautiful Midlands. Despite our rich cultural heritage and close-knit communities, Ireland now faces an alarming crisis, having the highest levels of loneliness in Europe. It's a complex and multifaceted issue that touches people of all ages and backgrounds. We're going to explore how this pervasive feeling can manifest in different stages of life, because it really is. It could be sudden onset, it could be due to bereavement or illness, it could be due to separation, or it could be something that takes place over decades. The family flee the nest, the partner moves away or passes away, we suddenly find ourselves isolated. It could be a young couple who buy a house in the Midlands because they couldn't afford it with the property prices in Dublin, and again through illness or death or separation somebody finds themselves isolated in an island in the Midlands, not knowing too many people in their communities. So many different scenarios, and I invite you this morning to text me on 083 3010 103 or WhatsApp and let me know your story and if it's something that affects you. Also let me know if you're happy to live alone and that is what you've chosen as well. But loneliness doesn't discriminate. It affects the elderly, the young, the successful and the struggling alike. It's a silent epidemic that undermines our mental and physical health. Today we'll discuss the reasons behind this growing issue, hear some personal stories and explore what we can do as a community to reconnect and support one another. So stay with me for the morning as we tackle loneliness crisis head on and look at ways we can foster a more connected and compassionate community. And I'm delighted to be joined this morning to discuss this topic by Sergeant Graham Kavanagh, Crime Prevention Officer for Laois Offaly, and also by Seamus Boland, the CEO of Irish Rural Link. We'll say a very quick hello to both men. Graham, very good morning.
Morning.
Graham, this is something that you actually highlighted on a LinkedIn post last week. You kind of mentioned it as being something that is kind of very pervasive, but also loneliness itself from a Garda perspective can lead to an increased sense of vulnerability, maybe more susceptible to crime as well. Just give us a quick example of that.
I suppose I go back to a study back in 2009 about the fear of crime, and what we generally see is that there might be a low level risk of crime, but there's always the fear that it'll happen because we read and hear stuff locally, or we hear stuff in the media, or we know family members that have been a victim of crime. And if you are on your own, unfortunately they'd see the odd occasion they get called to maybe a victim of crime and they're living alone and have been for a long number of years. And I suppose their inability to be able to look after the place, the attraction then to certain criminal elements to the location, that can prey on their vulnerabilities. But also, there might be no issue at all. So sometimes they get asked to go to somebody as a proactive measure, and you're trying to engage them back with the community. Is that really a policing thing? Well, yeah, it is, because if you can get them back engaged with their community, then it increases the chances and reduce the risk of them being affected by crime.
It's probably an often maybe unseen part of being a member of An Garda Síochána as well, that intimate link with people across the community. I mean, it really came to the fore during lockdowns when actually Gardaí were one of the few people who could actually access houses. And I would suspect there's a whole raft of people who are still kind of isolated from the COVID times that maybe as a community we've forgotten about. Seamus Boland, Irish Rural Link, is that what's happening out there? Are there people who have been left behind post-pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things I'd refer to here. First of all, there was a study in the Midland Western Health Board about 10 years ago, which you mentioned the word epidemic, which actually classified it almost an illness because it can have the same effects, and loneliness is quite pervasive. During the COVID, we had volunteers, not just in the Midlands, but all around the country, delivering, essential items to people who were in lockup. And usually it was older people, usually it was even couples living alone. But the main shock to all of the volunteers was most of the time people simply wanted to talk. Yeah. They wanted to chat. They wanted, and it was sheer loneliness. And the number of people who actually said to the volunteers that we had out there, I'm really lonely. I'd love to meet up and chat people, and I can't. And that, I think, it has other effects then. It has effects on health, has effects on, as Graham says, it invites criminal people in as well, unfortunately. And that is quite a pervasive illness almost,
And you put it so simply, actually, people want to talk. We're social animals at our core. And yet, I suppose there's probably people listening who spend all day talking to people, and they could be family members, young kids, work colleagues, whatever it is, but they're still missing that conversation with those people outside of that circle, or just that slightly different, because there's so many different scenarios in this. But when you mentioned we talk about that post-COVID environment as well, somebody who has highlighted recently the decline in social connections, and particularly for people of different ages, and looking at how we can reconnect older people with younger people and get our communities vibrant and talking again, is 2022 Rose of Tralee, Rachel Duffy. And Rachel has been announced as a new age-friendly ambassador for County Westmeath. And Rachel joins me now. You can pop on your headphones there, guys. Very good morning, Rachel.
Hi, Ronan. How are you?
Congrats on Rachel. Very interesting role. And I suppose you've been appointed as a new age-friendly ambassador for County Westmeath. That obviously didn't happen by accident. What was it that, I suppose, landed out on your lap? You clearly saw that there is a big decline in connection between different people.
Yeah, well, I suppose, particularly in the last few years after COVID, I see it in myself and my own family. I'm very lucky that I still have my two grandparents. But the fear that was instilled in elderly people during COVID, it was crazy. And yet, in the aftermath of it all, there has been nothing done for elderly people to encourage them to reintegrate into society, to get out and about and mingle again. And it's things like that you kind of, it makes you think about whether our older people are they being considered as important as the younger generation are, and is that kind of an unconscious ageism that we all have. And I suppose even as Rose of Tralee, I got to meet so many incredible people, and I've always been asked questions about who are the best people I've met, but always the most interesting people I meet are older people. They're the ones with the stories to tell, with the advice to give you and the wisdom to share. And I'm probably guilty of it myself, but when I ask some of my friends who they might have in their life, an older person that's not related to them, that they might be close to, I don't think any of them would be able to name someone. And so when I was approached about being the age-friendly ambassador for Westmeath, I straight away said yes, because I think it's such an incredible initiative to be rolling out. They're rolling it out across the country now. We're trying to promote it a lot at the moment. It's all about bringing elderly people back into the forefront of Irish society, getting them involved. After COVID, lots of rural communities struggled, lots of towns struggled, places closed down, but it's about getting everyone out and about again and out and active. And I think particularly as a younger person, I can see the rise of technology and everything else has really created a huge gap between those generations. And it's important that we try and bridge those gaps. That just because you're an older person doesn't mean life has to be less enjoyable or less fun. Every day should be an amazing day, regardless of what age you are.
Yeah, and this was, you were quoted in the Westmeath Independent during the week too, and you spoke about, from your own experience as well, that you noticed your own grandparents a decline in confidence and increased isolation post-pandemic too. Is that reflected across the community in Westmeath, do you think?
Oh, totally. And like, that was just my own experience. And it's, for me, what stands out there is that, you know, my grandparents and my family, we have a great support network. We have loads of people calling in to my grandparents. We're all in, you know, every week. My granddad unfortunately got sick over Christmas, and he's had to go into a nursing home. So those are all changes that you're trying to navigate, and you just want to hope that their lives are being as fulfilling as they should be. But for me, as a younger person, you know, you could ask, well, what do you know about it? You know, I can only speak to my own experiences. And if I'm looking at my family, and we have loads of people there helping out, you know, my grandparents have a huge support network. And if I can see that, you know, lack of confidence, you know, imagine a person who's living on their own, who doesn't have relatives calling in. And one of the girls, as part of Age Friendly Ireland, told me a story 2 weeks ago when we had the AGM in Mullingar about, during COVID, a man posting letters to himself so that the postman would come in to the house. And I just thought that was just devastating, that he felt he was lacking in connection that much that he was sending post letters to himself.
Yeah. And I think actually I remember hearing a story like that, and unfortunately that wasn't an isolated case, and it was, you know, replicated in other counties and indeed other countries as well. And that's it. Like, as we just kind of touched briefly there with Seamus Boland before that, around that generation of people, and again, it could be of all ages, who are kind of left behind and forgotten about. But I suppose even growing up as well, we were always told, you know, knock on your neighbour's door, walk down the road. That's another thing we seem to have forgotten as well. We don't know what it's like for, if somebody calls to a house unsolicited now, it's almost like pull the curtains and don't answer the door. Whereas we grew up in a society where that was a regular thing. The back door was always open. People called in. Yeah. You spoke to your elderly neighbours as well. How do we go about changing that, do you think? Or is it too late?
I think a lot of it almost kind of comes down to our own inhibitions as people. I think we all carry a lot of shame as people, and I think it's really hard for someone to admit that they're lonely. I think, you know, so many people are doing such incredible work, you know, with mental health charities and get people talking, but I do think loneliness comes under the umbrella of mental health, and it's very hard to admit that you're lonely, and loneliness is a very peculiar emotion to try and explain, and to admit to someone I feel really lonely is really hard. So I think it's a matter of getting talking, and maybe the younger generation might be a little bit better at the talking, because if I imagine my grandparents' generation, you know, they weren't exactly all sitting around talking about their feelings. You know, it wasn't the done thing, but they showed their feelings in other ways. But sometimes the bottom line is you have to talk. You have to talk about your feelings. You have to talk about what's affecting you. And I thought at the AGM in Westmeath, the issues facing elderly people, that as a young person, I wouldn't have even considered. Simple things like transport, like a local handyman that they can rely on. You know, the old age pension doesn't go a long way. There's so many issues facing older people, and then you have to throw loneliness into the mix. We're just not talking about it enough.
And even somebody in the full of their health too can still face that discrimination and those challenges. But I know you mentioned their technology too, and you know, we always put it the young people, and we never kind of say, well, what ages are we talking about? But most people are consumed by technology at this point. But yet it could be a great enabler, because a lot of the older generation are very savvy when it comes to phones. So maybe there's potentially technological solutions that could be looked into.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's the fault of younger generations that we can tend to look at older people and think, oh, they're older, they won't understand me, or that they might be narrow-minded, or they won't share the same opinions. So it's a shut shop from the get-go, that there's no point even opening that dialogue. Whereas if we're just a little bit more forthcoming in respect and dialogue about having different opinions, not understanding each other, it's amazing what you would be able to help an older person with, help them learn, and then it's amazing what they could teach you as well. You know, I can see my nan and granddad never had a mobile phone up until this year, and my granddad is flying away on his mobile phone. I'm sure if you tried to explain it to him a few years ago, he would have said no way, but it comes to a point where you take a bit of time, and it's a necessity in today's society to have these skills.
No, congratulations. It's a fantastic role, and by the way you're speaking there, I think a very, very fitting appointment as well. I'm going to bring Seamus Boland in for a second too. Seamus, I say a lot of what Rachel has touched on there, you're seeing on a daily basis with Irish Rural Link.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's solutions to, Ronan, that we could talk about. But the thing, I would also broaden it a little bit. It's not just older people who are lonely. One of the biggest contributions to mental health difficulties in farming is actually the fact that farmers are now effectively working by themselves. And we know the statistics are not good in terms of suicide, in terms of mental health in that area. So that's a whole area that we need to concentrate on as well. I mean, going back to the older people and solutions in terms of technology, there was a brilliant program which we ran for a while until then the government stopped the funding, which effectively allowed us to train people, and we had a long list when this funding ended, train people who had never used a computer or a phone before, don't even know how to switch it on. And, we put something like 4,000 people in the Midlands through that programme. And it made a huge difference because people are trying to connect. And I think it's connection is what we're talking about. There are loads of solutions about how to manage this, but I would also broaden it out that loneliness affects people with disability living alone, living by themselves, younger people. It affects farmers in a major way, and we have a major job on our hands to redesign the way we manage social connections and the way we design social activity. I mean, take the simple thing of pubs not having the same number of people because people can't drive and drink, and that's a good thing. We welcome that from the very get-go, but it has made a significant contribution to people who are not having the same social contact. So there are solutions, but it's a very broad subject as well.
Yeah. And Rachel, of course, you would have had first-hand experience, of course, behind the bar in a local pub, and do you see that as the decline of the pub trade? And it's predicted now that something like 90% of publicans, their families don't want to inherit the pub from them and continue the business. Do you see that kind of trend happening too? That we're losing that social connection even from our pubs around the towns?
Yeah, well, and I suppose, culture is changing, Irish culture is changing, attitudes towards drinking is changing as well, but I definitely seen it working in the pub between lockdowns. You're open and closed. And one of the things that it used to kind of upset me a lot was that there would be people, and particularly older men, coming in alone, who would come in for their quiet pint in the evening, and I might have been the first person they might have chatted to that day, and to the point where they'd start confiding in me about stuff going on in their lives and telling me about, I suppose, their health or how they got on with the doctor. And that's very upsetting to see that. And as a younger person, I never would have thought about those things before. And only when it was facing me and I was going really deflated and feeling like I needed to do more. And I think COVID obviously had effects on everyone of all age groups. But there are so many solutions, and I think the not being able to drink and drive is such a necessity. But if there was a local bus, a shuttle bus to and things that would really help people along.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry, Rachel, the line is just the line is just dropping off there, unfortunately. But no, I think a fair point as well. Yeah, absolutely. Nobody wants to encourage drinking and driving, but there should be some sort of a rural transport system. But Rachel, no, look, you are taking action. Congratulations on taking that role, and all the very best as you move forward with age-friendly ambassador for County Westmeath. Thanks, Rachel. There, of course, 2022 Rose of Tralee. I think in Laois, Anna May McHugh is the age-friendly ambassador. In Offaly, it's Michael Duignan. So we're going to continue this topic and look at loneliness and examine it a bit deeper. And after the break, we'll look at how loneliness can contribute to feelings of insecurity and vulnerability.
Saturday View on Midlands 103 with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
And we're looking at that topic of loneliness here on Saturday View this morning. And Ireland, of course, is up there as being the loneliest country in Europe based on research that was announced last year. And that, of course, backed up and verified by Seamus Boland from Irish Rural Link. But I'm also joined by Graham Kavanagh, Crime Prevention Officer for Laois Offaly. And last week, Graham put a post up on the business social media platform LinkedIn, and he was based on conversations he'd been having with people around loneliness and that sense of security and the community responses we can make. And Graham drew attention to the links between kind of loneliness and then an increased vulnerability and fear around crime as well. And we just kind of touched on there earlier that really we probably underappreciate the role that members of An Garda Síochána play in this. And Rachel Duffy mentioned there that as a working behind a bar, she was often the first person that some people spoke to that day. So very hard to develop human connection when you're not meeting people, and you just can't, problem shared is a problem halved and all that kind of thing. Graham, you probably see this on the ground every day, people who are effectively isolated within their communities.
So a couple of examples where you would see criminal activity is are bogus traders calling to people that don't have a family or don't have that connection with the community and doing work for them and taking thousands of euro off them. And the other one is romance frauds. Men predominantly, older demographic on their own, can use the internet and get duped into falling in love online and duped out of money, and a lot of money, and it's starting to get reported now, which I suppose that's it. It's good to see people are not afraid to come and report it to us, but they're examples of where loneliness can, I suppose, affect somebody, and how crime can sort of infiltrate their life.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that angle actually of the romance fraud as well. We kind of don't think it's happening, and it was probably something for a while. If people were, had fallen victim to it, there was probably a sense of almost shame or embarrassment, and even coming forward about it.
Yeah, and that's the message we always give: do not be embarrassed, do not be afraid. Make this person that's done this to you accountable. We're starting to see now a lot of these frauds that some of them are emanating from within the Republic of Ireland. They're not from outside of jurisdiction now. But be reported to us. Don't be afraid to engage with us on things like that.
And I suppose if somebody then has been a victim of a crime, it's really a double whammy if they are living alone or they're feeling isolated too. And I mean, it must play huge on someone's psyche around the fear of a recurring attack or the same happening again.
And that's where the likes of myself or my colleagues get called in, is to try and, I occasionally get called into, maybe, I won't put an age on it, but an older person living alone, to give them crime prevention advice. And they're reeling from being a victim of crime. You're asking me to come out and ask them to spend money fixing up or to do something. I know that's not going to work. So my first port of call is family or a good steady neighbour or somebody in the community that's reliable and trustworthy, that I can bring them on board without breaching any trust and get them the help they need. So really what you're trying to do is, changing the locks is the simple part. It's trying to reintegrate that person back into the little social network in the community that suddenly people are watching them all the time. The right people are watching them. Sometimes they don't get to see when the act takes place, but you're trying to get them back into the society. And Seamus said, the pandemic definitely, I definitely think, we were talking about it off air there, we would have all been involved in these community forums over the pandemic, and they all wrapped up towards the end of it. And really, now's the time they're needed, we saw how good we are as a community with helping people over the pandemic. And I think we've forgotten that we're able to do that, and how valuable that connection with the people that are, there's people in the communities that don't want to talk to you. There's people that are happy in their own armchair, but you know what, they still need that little bit of social connection.
Yeah, and actually I've one text in from Maureen in Mountbellick here who says that she's a pensioner and says we also have to help ourselves. Older people need to come up with the modern world and modern ideas, get out and go on holidays, read plenty of books. Reading is great for both mental and physical health. If able, get out for walks in safe places, practice cooking new recipes. We can all do all kinds of things. We have to help ourselves too. But again, that's if you have the physical capability, the accessibility to towns, cities, to transport, or maybe just nobody to do that with. So again,
you're stuck in a rut. You're stuck in a rut, and it's trying to get you out of that rut.
You see, loneliness, it links very strongly to mental health, and loneliness can often be the cause of mental health. And people do get into, as Graham says, ruts, or into situations where they somehow slide away from having the enthusiasm to go forward and stand out. But I think there are ways, and one of the things that happened during those networks which were involved in COVID, and you mentioned Michael Dignan, he was one of our ambassadors at the time as well, and one of the things we did, we had a network of people known to people. You didn't have a stranger rocking up at your door and saying, "Hi, I'm Seamus Boland," and you never met them before. You had their own neighbours rocking up, and the whole way of that, the way those networks worked, were very simple. Those people who are known to the people living alone, or people who might need help, and they would rock up, and it would be a chat about stuff that's in common. So it wasn't seen as a charity, it wasn't seen as anything, it was just seen as neighbours chatting neighbours, getting to know what's going on. And though the modern world is so bad now that you can live beside somebody, a neighbour of mine, I remember, said, I think we should introduce ourselves. We haven't met for a while.
Yeah.
We only live across the field.
But, and there's even there's another element to that as well. You could actually live beside somebody and maybe know them from social media, and that's a whole other basket. I have a text from another listener, and they haven't specified their name, and I wouldn't even ask to read their name out anyway. But she said, "Thank you for talking about being alone. That's for me. That's me for the last 24 years. I'm female, now 66, an OAP, and life is getting harder to bear instead of easier." Yeah. Now, there's a text that really just shows what life can be like.
And I think the other texter was talking about people getting. I think we need to notice in our area if people are not socialising, you don't see them even at mass, even at local shops, etc. And you need to just say, something, I'll make a mental note here. I might just, find a reason to engage, because we all like talking. And yes, there's the odd cranky one, and so what if they shut the door in your face? But at least it might have made their day that they managed to shut the door in someone's face. So the point I'm making is we all have an obligation, to notice around us, not be depending on social. Lift our head out of the phones and notice around us and look and say, I haven't seen Joe for a while. I haven't seen Mary for a while. I must look out for them the next time I get a chance. That's a simple little statement like that can make a huge difference.
Your caller there, I'm not going to prejudge man or woman, but like that situation, you're on your own for that long. That has to have an effect on your mental health, And if nobody's coming to you to take your hand and take you away to help you, sometimes we have to make that step ourselves, And like the one thing that drives me mad sometimes, particularly with parents with younger kids, there's nothing to do for them, We're spoiled rotten in the Midlands with groups and sports and everything to keep our kids busy. But as you get older, there are the likes of the women's sheds, the ICA, the IFA are pretty good with their engagement. Pick one of them and go and give it a go. That's sometimes the biggest battle. Oh, sure, I'm not going to know them, or I know such a person in it and I don't want to go because there's obviously maybe been a bit of history, but give it a go, and it might surprise you, or pick a few of them and go to a few of them,
Yeah, because Will Faulkner at Midlands today was in, I think it was Castle Pollard a couple of weeks back, and I think they have a friendship club up there now, so there are kind of signs of what's happening in our communities. Is it fair to say with the likes of Garda Síochána, and very much like even the way nursing, the profession, that sort of, those kind of vocational careers, where that piece of the interaction, the connections with people, just those casual conversations that mean the world, right? If somebody was to sit down and look at the bottom line figures and say, we can't afford our staff to be doing this, like the Gardaí obviously don't put a budget aside for the guards to be able to go and talk to people, but it's a huge part. Yeah. Is the ability to do that as a member of the force being eroded, as I say, as is happening with a lot of those types of roles?
I'm not going to get dragged into having a go off my organisation. I still love Garda Síochána.
Absolutely not.
But I suppose like everything, we're hearing about roads policing numbers down. It's the same with community policing, Community policing is a dedicated role with the guards. You cannot be a guard on a regular unit and also be a community policing member, So I did community policing for 12 years here. You cannot measure that work. You cannot measure it. You can't measure what I do as a crime prevention officer. You can't measure it, but the whole thing is getting out and engaging. So a lot of the times the phone calls I am making is like to the public health nurse or to some local man or woman in the area. Do you know Seamus Boland by any chance? Yeah. And can you show me where they live? And call into door. We don't have a reason. We don't have to have an excuse to knock on your door, Unfortunately, a lot of times when we're knocking on your door, it's for bad reasons, But it's great to be able to knock on somebody's door. Hey, I am Graham Kavanagh. Can you stick on the kettle? Yeah. And they're going to be as cagey as hell, but get in and sort of find out, get a feeling as to where they're at in life right now, and then try and encourage them through family if they exist in the area, because sometimes the one thing you find is no family. They're bachelor or they're single all their life and nobody exists in their community, which happens, but trying to just get that engagement for them, somebody to link in with them, the right person to link in with.
And there was some really kind of famous shots during the pandemic of Gardaí in rural parts of Ireland, and you know, that classic kitchen with the Stanley range or the open fire, and you think also that person, and in a time when we speak of portals in a different sense, but that portal to Ireland's heritage and past as well, and it's a shame to see that being a missed opportunity maybe for people with that social connection.
It is, but the key to all of it, the guards, the public, all the statutory agencies, and I'm very strong in this, would not be able to do our work without the community, whether it's community alerts or whatever group it is. We cannot work with communities without the community helping us. And that's the secret to all this loneliness thing. I mean, I had an uncle, well, my wife's uncle, he's dead now 8 years, but he used to ramble. And he used to call in to me 3 or 4 nights a week. Half the time he was looking for gossip. So I used to fill him with lies because I knew he'd be telling stories back to people, you know. And he knew he'd be looking at me. But he rambled, and that's gone, you know.
And you probably gave out about him in your own head, and you wouldn't change it for the world.
I wouldn't
try
and miss him, like, you know.
But Graham, you've touched on there, like, you know, it's up to communities as well to try to respond, to take action, and we've even mentioned a couple of examples where Midlands communities are trying that as well. And James, that's a key part of Irish Rural Link as well, to look at what the pressing issues are. What can you do? What's in your plans, I suppose, as an organisation, and how can you sort of lobby government and leverage to make sure that the funding is there to allow people to, you know, to try to reduce the impact of this epidemic?
Yeah, well, we've been running a programme for the last 15 years at this stage. We call it a County Champions Programme. Basically, we have voluntary people in every county who organise communities at certain times, obviously COVID, but also normal times, where we develop a network of getting in touch. Like, you could have, for example, I use Michael Dignan because I know he won't mind. He would organise a number of people that he would know in his area, and they would just be they'd be allocated. Will you watch that road or that laneway? And by the way, it's not just rural, it's in towns as well. The loneliest people can be in the most built up areas.
Yeah,
that's fact
true.
as well. And so we do that as often as we can. So I think I would argue that, as Graham already said, that the networks we set up over COVID actually should have been kept going. And we've asked government time and time again, could you try and keep those networks alive, particularly at times at the beginning of September. Now, we always do a call in association with the Gardaí. Every September we say nights are getting darker. Crime is beginning to alert itself again, and we ask people to get very alert and all of that, and we work with the Gardaí in that. But it's not just at September, it can be any time of the year. And also it alerts people to the kind of scams that Graham is talking about. But also, don't forget, farmers, especially farmers working alone, need assistance. And I think we've lobbied very strongly that there needs to be a better mental health and well-being programme around that whole area. And I know the IFA do great work, Macron and Pharma, all of the organisations do good work there, but it needs to be a little bit more focused. But I think there are solutions, and I think, it's a matter of deciding we need to tackle this. So let's use the community, let's use the Gardaí, let's use the agencies, and as your listener said, also, you know, talk to people, get out there, make yourself available, and let's see how it works. But it won't happen unless we actually make it a priority.
Yeah. And we mentioned, you know, it is very easy to think of the older person or the farmer who's out working their own or living on their own and doesn't see people, but you equally can have somebody in their maybe mid-30s, say, married with one young child, who previously, pre-pandemic, was 5 days a week in the office, now works from home, child goes to a childminder, goes to school. That person may not be seeing anybody outside of their family, only on a fucking Zoom call, and probably the most inhuman thing ever. Yeah.
You mentioned there earlier about younger people, all right? I'm a father myself of 2 kids. One really doesn't give a damn about the phone, and the other one lives on the phone. But we talk about loneliness about young men and younger people. That's why, in my head, like, and I'm not from an expert, I'm from a parent's perspective, it's that device, you know, their life is on that phone. It's scrolling, it's swiping, but have them have a conversation with somebody. No, pick the phone. And Rachel will give out to me, she's a younger person, I know, but I'm talking about the teens, you know. To actually pick up a phone and ring somebody is not what they do anymore.
Yeah, but that has also spread. There was research last week, like even in the workplace now, that we're scheduling phone calls And it's happening,
madness.
and older people, I say older, 30s, 40s, who would lived on the phone.
Yeah.
Although I am hearing a little bit of a comeback on that now, and I mentioned to somebody recently, WhatsApp, right?
Yeah.
You could send me a WhatsApp message and I could be sitting at home tonight going, right, God, Graham Kavanagh text me. And you look and it's 25 or 30 messages down. Yeah. So WhatsApp has become the new email.
Yeah.
So actually now it's easier to ring somebody. So we're going back a little bit, but a couple of more texts will come in as well. One person says, as my friend said, our social life is going to a funeral or a doctor.
Yeah.
And that can be it. And again, even the doctor now doesn't have the time to speak to somebody nearly because they're going through so many people and they've so many guests or patients to see and stuff like that. So it clearly is something that's highlighting. Ina says she's loving the show today and is thankful for us discussing this topic because again, it's a very, very pressing topic for people out there, and technology obviously playing a role on it. And it's a challenge.
And can I say to the odd school that's listening or principal, don't be afraid to bring in people of, let's say, the older another generation, to speak to younger people in whether it's primary or secondary school. Where that happens, it works very well as well. And all they do is just talk about normal things, but it's their history, whereas the young people are learning about a history that they didn't know. So there's loads of ways of doing it.
To tag on from what Seamus is saying, I know Age Friendly Ireland, I think it's Tom Curran and Leash, actually an email I read the other day from, they're putting a feeling out there for an intergenerational project. And like, I have a daughter going into TY next year. Like, that's a classic example. Like, I remember a few years ago they did it in Meath, where they brought older people and TY students together and they did a whole IT piece. They did something like that in Mount Rat there a couple of years back. I remember being over with them, But it's suddenly you're creating a connection with people in the community. So the whole IT bit is the sideline. This is the big bit. And it might be that they don't have kids. So suddenly they have a younger person that they can link in with, So that's simple things. The one thing, and I don't want to sound like a politician, but like, we have so many voluntary groups and stakeholders out, statutory agencies out there doing the same work. And yet, has anybody actually sat down and catalogued the work that gets done, and said, trying a more cohesive approach towards, we're a small island in the Atlantic Ocean on our own. The last bastion before the States. No wonder we're a lonely nation.
And we've always portrayed it, and we still have that, land of 100,000 welcomes in terms of how Irish people, whether somebody is a visitor or an immigrant, we do at large embrace people and bring them into our communities. But yet, this is happening. We're not, we're land of storytellers. I suppose the big question I have before we finish for both of you, I'm going to put it to you first, Graham. It's not too late to reverse this trend, is it?
It's not. No, it's not. It's not at all. I mean, it's just, I still think we're nursing the whole the hangover from the pandemic, and it's going to take a few years to get over the 3 or 4 years of that, But the simple thing you could do today is, if there's somebody on your lane, and I keep focusing on the rural thing, if there's somebody, is to maybe just knock on the door. If there's not, drop in a note with your phone number and ask them. If there's anything you want to chat about, if you want to have a chat or a cup of tea, call me. It's the only thing you did.
It's brilliant advice, and indeed it works in an urban area. Some of the saddest situations we've come across are situations where somebody in a built-up area has not been well, and indeed we've had sad situations where people have been found dead in that situation. So I think it's a matter of opening our minds. We are, as you said, a very embracing kind of people. Ireland always has been. So it's no harm to say, as Graham says, notice, first of all, notice in your own area, notice the people who are living alone. Figure out, do people need help? People might need a Meals on Wheels service, which we operate as well. People might need something or other, and they may need somebody to ask about that. And so just on a day-to-day basis, all of us can just notice where we live, notice who's living near us. Have we noticed them before? Are they there? And make a point of finding out. And after that, then, I think I would ask the local authorities, and we have elections coming up now, and I would ask government to re-establish those networks. They don't cost, in fact, most of them are done voluntary. Yeah. They don't cost a lot, but they need a driver and they need somebody to put them forward. I think if we did just those two things, we'd be doing a lot.
Seamus Boland, Irish Rural Link, thank you so much for coming in. It's a topic that really is catching our listeners' interest as well, and so many. And I would absolutely say there's probably loads of stories out there that we haven't heard yet, but we'll try and continue to have them on Saturday View over the coming weeks and months. Let us be a connection back to the community as well. We'll try and bring you more stuff. Actually, next Saturday View will be outside Offaly Volunteer Centre in Tullamore for an outside broadcast, and that will shine a light on all the voluntary groups around the counties that are doing such great work to reconnect our communities and keep our communities vibrant. Graham Kavanagh, Crime Prevention Officer, Laois Offaly as well. Huge thanks to you. Graham is not running for election, as you said, just to clarify that.
Yeah.
And after a break, I'm going to look at that whole issue around asylum seekers and immigration, because a new poll shows that nearly 2/3 of you want a more closed immigration policy. But one really important text I have to highlight before I let our guys go: we have to wish a very happy birthday to Mr. Seamus Boland. Yeah. There you go, live on air. Happy birthday, Seamus. And I better add to that because it's my good wife's birthday as well today. So a very happy birthday to Mrs. Berry, and see you all shortly for the celebrations. Time for a quick break. After that, I'll be joined by Minister Sean Fleming.
Saturday View on Midlands 103, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
A recent poll by the Irish Times, Ipsos Behaviour and Attitudes, surveyed 1,500 people, and it looked at their attitudes towards immigration, and significant voter unhappiness was detected with the government's immigration policy, and about 79% of voters said they want more action from the coalition to manage immigration. And there has been some changes even in this week alone around immigration policy and stuff like that. So look at this a little bit deeper. I'm glad to be joined by Sean Fleming, a Fianna Fáil TD for Laois Offaly and Minister of State at the Department of Foreign Affairs. Very good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Ronan.
Sean, the results of this poll, is it fair to say probably unsurprising, but the government has been taking action?
Yeah, both statements are correct. I'm not surprised at the reaction in that opinion poll. We're finding it on the ground that more and more people are raising the issue of immigration. Now, there's a lot of people believe in terms of the people who came from Ukraine, we were right to be open and generous and accommodate them all and those who required accommodation. But now that the war has gone on so long, people are saying the over-generosity we had at the beginning, which Irish people were in favour of, maybe needs to be rolled back. And that's exactly what the government is doing in that situation. And I think if the war had arose again, we would be generous. But then after a period of time, we need to, when things settle down, roll back that. So that's on the Ukrainian side, and the big changes there, and people know they were getting the normal European standard for social welfare based on the country they're in, which was about €230. That's now been reduced to €38 per week, given that they're going to have their accommodation, their food, their laundry and all services provided, and that's kind of in line with most European countries. Now, I suppose in relation to the bigger issue, all the people who are coming in from, we'll say, outside of Europe, but many of them are coming in through European countries, and definitely there's been a major influx in that. A lot of it due to climate change in the world. There, you see famine in some countries, you see phenomenal storms and earthquakes, and people are fleeing those countries and they're arriving right across Europe.
I'd say many people and most listeners and people probably, I think they absolutely appreciate why somebody might come here, and even just that thing sometimes, and even that difference between international protection applicant and an economic migrant, and even a migrant workforce, which any thriving democracy needs to build an economy as well. I think people don't have a huge dispute around that. It really is around the control, and the concern for control, immigration control, rose from 7% in 2022 to 36% this year, based on that poll as well. Why do you think the government was maybe slow in getting that message out, and maybe having open communications to people about the numbers coming in, and again, how they would be managed and integrated?
Okay, well, the 2022, they were during COVID and there was very little movement anywhere. So that was a particularly low period. But anyway, the numbers have gone up, and as we've seen, they're gone up all over Europe, and we've seen that in several other, and they're arriving here because we have open travel, and we need a European response. But in the meantime, I think Irish people, as you've rightly said, if people come here on work permits, 40,000 come from all over the world on work permits straight into jobs when they come here, and people have no problem with that. But the people who are coming, who are in truth economic migrants, and they're not fleeing safety issues in their own country. And the obvious question that everybody asks: why are there some? If it's so unsafe for the men who are arriving here to come from a country, be it Nigeria or somewhere in Africa, why is it safe for their wives and children to stay there? So that's a question that there is no answer to. If it's not safe for the women and children to stay, if it's unsafe, if they're safe to stay in their own country, why is it unsafe when the men arrive here to say they need protection? So there's a big issue there about whether they're economic migrants. The recent move where we're going to open up Thornton Hall, it's good to see that coming on stream in the next couple of weeks, that people feel a little bit intimidated on the Grand Canal there in Dublin, as we've seen. The government have moved them, and we did have a facility in Stradbally which is now closing because of the electric picnic, and that site will be totally cleared out. And we've had a number of people from Ukraine there.
Yeah. So, and apologies, Sean,
they're moving on.
Our time is short now, but thank you for much this morning and for clarifying that. And look, we will talk to you again about that subject soon. Sean Fleming, Minister of State at the Department of Foreign Affairs, thank you for that this morning. I'm going to just leave with one very quick text that came in from one of our listeners, and it sums up really that topic around loneliness too. They said that they're loving the chat this morning, that they're one of those on their own. They don't have children, sadly, but life is at a fast pace and they feel a burden to society and guilty about admitting their loneliness. Well, you're not alone. Thank you for your text as well. And hopefully there's groups out there that you can reach out to and that this morning's conversation will help you. I'll talk to you all next week.
Lumclune Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. Lumclunenergy.com. Midlands 103.